came across a list by Comic Vine of the top 100 Marvel comic villains in their opinion. Now, a lot of people are speculating about who they think the next big baddie of the MCU will be, and I would like to specify that this is not going to be my prediction video of who I think is most likely to be seen in the MCU. This is purely a list of those I would like to see the most myself. So these would be some personal favorites from that list and some that I noticed that weren't necessarily on there. And then just like to see them peppered in somehow, maybe as an individual franchise bad guy, or potentially, yes, as a big baddie for everyone to face off against. Now, again, we don't know if there is going to be another baddie like Thanos moving forward. There has been speculation that the big saga isn't something that the MCU is going to be doing, mainly just looking forward to more of like a 2 or 3 movie kind of overarching theme. But again, that's speculation and rumor. We're not 100% sure what Marvel Studios is working on for the next few phases still at this point of the video being recorded, so who knows. But with that, let's get on into it with my top 10 most wanted bad guys in the MCU. Number 10, Ultron. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've already had Ultron, and you're correct. However, Ultron is one of those villains in the comics that pops up continuously, causing problems for the Avengers over and over again. And I would like to see this treatment done a little bit more in the MCU, with villains coming back, kind of gaining from their previous experience, showing up stronger, and creating additional hurdles that our Avengers have to get over. And I think a great place to see this would be specifically in the upcoming Vision and Scarlet Witch series. We're going to have to see Vision be brought back to life, most likely by Shuri, being our tech wizard now. And I think a really cool idea would be like, Vision has a little bit of like corrupted coding of Ultron within him. Needless to say, I mean, computer programs and viruses are hard to stuff out because there's plenty of places on the interweb for them to hide and programming for them to kind of back up and duplicate. So it's something easily for him to pop up somehow. It wouldn't take some big thing for the MCU to kind of have to explain around either. So I think it would be an easy thing for him to slide in there, and something I would like to see for him. And like I said, quite a few of our other MCU villains that we've seen so far that kind of got the short end of the stick in their initial introduction. Now, again, I understand that he has been seen already once, so that is why I have him at the bottom of the list at number 10. Number 9, the Mandarin. The Mandarin is something that myself and I know many other Marvel fans out there have been wanting to see corrected in the MCU for a long time. In Iron Man 3, yes, we do have the Mandarin, but it's a fake front Mandarin. And in fact, we find out in the one-shot All Hail the King that the real Mandarin exists and is not happy about what Trevor Slately and the terrorist group of Iron Man 3 did with his persona. We also know that technically to his organization, the Ten Rings, does exist, as we've seen it in Iron Man 1, when we see the logo behind the ransom video that's taken of Tony Stark. So we know he's out there, and I would like to see the real Mandarin come out and be used properly. Now, it will be something more of an interesting use of him, since Iron Man is no longer a major player within the MCU. Unfortunately, rest in peace, Tony Stark. But I do believe they can work him in somewhere, and I'd really like to see that happen. Number 8, Dr. Doom. Many will be probably shocked to see him so far down on my list, especially since so many people have also theorized that he will be one of the major arcing villains of the MCU moving forward. Again, this isn't who I think is most likely, this is who I want to see the most. Dr. Doom has been done at this point twice, and I have to be honest, I have not been impressed with either of his adaptations. Something I really was disappointed in, considering how much I like McMullen, who played him originally. I do think he has a great potential to do some awesome things within the MCU, because they have done some really great things with characters who have previously not been used all that well, but I think I do want to wait and see him a little bit further down the road than right away. Number 7, Super Skrull. I will say off the bat, this does not mean I want to see the Secret Invasion storyline right away. I think that's something I would like to see on down the road, when we really are truly at a place where we need to replace some of our fallen heroes, but I do think he could play a major part within the Captain Marvel franchise, and I think that would be something great to see. He is something that not only can replicate, like the rest of the Skrull, someone's identity by shapeshifting, but he can also replicate enhanced abilities. So not only can he look like a superhero, but he can also do everything they can as far as superpowers go. And I think that would be something great to see in the Kree Skrull War, which he does take a part in, a major part in actually in the comics, which would play well within the Captain Marvel movies if we do kind of see the continuation of the story from where it left off in the first film. So again, love to see Skrulls, and I'd love to see the Super Skrull, but maybe not Secret Invasion just yet. Number 6, Mr. Sinister. I find this one to be a great option for a major title villain for our heroes to face. Now, typically, Mr. Sinister is more associated with the X-Men, but the X-Men are quickly approaching their tie-in to the MCU, so I think he would be great. I also do think that he could fit in well with the regular Avengers as kind of just a segue into the X-Men as well, considering we will need someone to kind of explain the difference between Inhumans and mutants, and he is kind of an evolutionary expert and would do great in that role as well. I also have to admit, it's kind of a personal favorite. I was a big fan of the character back in the classic X-Men cartoons that I grew up on as a kid, so I would love to see him on the big screen. My only kind of apprehension here is the fact that he is typically a kind of a pawn of Apocalypse, which we did just get a version of within the X-Men franchises, so it'll probably be a while before we see Apocalypse tied in again. So I would say that's why I put him a little bit lower on the list. I don't think he's necessarily probable. I know technically this isn't a probability list, but it is a little bit of a factor, I guess. But I would love to see Mr. Sinister and his sidekick Jack the Ripper that he uses to kind of hunt down and murder people, and then kind of the twist that it's actually Mr. Sinister behind it all. So again, would love to see him, but I think due to Apocalypse, it might have to be a little bit before we are ready for him. Number 5, the Phoenix Force. This is something, of course, we are going to see very soon, depending on when you're watching this video, but I think it would be a great way to circle back as we introduce the X-Men into the MCU. Of course, Fox has been acquired by Disney, and so we know that they are due to make their entrance into the MCU, so it's only a matter of when and how. Of course, we have been kind of told that it will be probably 5 or so years before they are introduced, but I think the Phoenix Force would be a great way to introduce them. The Phoenix Force is the kind of launching pad that results in the X-Men versus the Avengers storyline, and I would love to see this used as how they're introduced. Basically what happens, the Phoenix Force returns to Earth to inhabit Hope Summers. The Avengers, knowing what the Phoenix Force can do based upon the records of Jean Grey, try to intervene and try to take Hope Summers in. Of course, the X-Men do not like this and go up against the Avengers to protect one of their own. Again, this ultimately leads to the Avengers and the X-Men having to team up to take on the Phoenix Force, as ultimately it is too much of a power from the handle, and the teams have to work together to bring it down. Again, I think this would be something great to tie them in. It would kind of play back to the fact that this X-Men is ending again with the Phoenix Force, and to start off with the Phoenix Force would kind of avoid this whole let's use the Phoenix Force to end the X-Men storyline that's happened now kind of twice. Number 4, Galacticus. I do agree with everyone out there. I think Galacticus would be a fantastic saga overarching villain for the next phases of the MCU, and because of that, I know there's a lot of information already out there on him, so I will kind of keep it short and sweet on this one. The great thing about him is that he usually brings along a lot of kind of sub-villains with him. He usually has several disciples who go out and scout planets and get them ready for his eventual devouring. And plus, he needs a major redo and kind of redemption moment from being the giant dust cloud from Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer. He has powers that would be an amazing next hurdle for the Avengers, as he is kind of the next step up from Thanos. So all of this combined, I think he'd be something that Fantastic's to see, and I hope we do get to see at some point down the road. Number 3, Kong the Conqueror. Another very popular theorized villain for the MCU is Kong the Conqueror. Now, he is a Time Lord who travels between dimensions and timelines to try to rule them all, taking out anyone in his path along the way. I think he would be great because he has great staying power for the MCU. Now, as we see him develop in the comics, Kong takes on various forms and identities as his powers and his wisdom grows and he ages through the years. This would make for a great kind of puzzle for us as an audience to figure out as we see his various forms pop up throughout various films, and then ultimately seeing him come to his full power against the entire MCU. Now, this is why I do place him above Galacticus, because I do see him having a greater staying power and more versatile use within the MCU. Another thing is I also really would like to see him a little bit more because of what would be needed to introduce him, and that would be the Young Avengers, something I have been really wanting to see for a while now, ever since we kind of started getting those teasers of like the next generation and what that will look like. So please do Kong, but more importantly, do the Young Avengers MCU, please. Number 2, Grandmaster or Arcade. Another returning villain I would really like to see used to his full potential is Grandmaster. In the comics, Grandmaster is often seen as much more of a powerful cosmic being that manipulates two major groups to fight against each other. Now, we saw this at a kind of a smaller scale in Ragnarok when he puts the Hulk and Thor against each other, but I'd like to see him come back and kind of do more with that. Or to kind of overlap with this, kind of being a similar villain, is Arcade, who often does a similar thing, putting hero groups or individual heroes against each other or together in these very dangerous, elaborate puzzles that they have to figure out to survive. I think this would be a really fun and interesting storyline to see, especially kind of on that arcade side of things. But again, I'd be happy to see Grandmaster come back, be reused, and kind of fulfill this role as well. This also would be a great way to introduce the X-Men to the Avengers and the rest of the MCU, as Arcade tends to be more of an X-Men focused villain, and this would also be a little bit more of a preferable use than the Phoenix Force. Again, I think Phoenix Force has been done, and that's the only reason why I would like to see it done sooner rather than later, so it's not a crutch for the X-Men storyline moving forward. But I think this would be a lot more fun, because if they could be shoved together in a situation where they must figure out one of these puzzles or dangerous games together, it would kind of drive them together rather than apart, which I would kind of like to see a little bit more than an all-out battle, as we kind of had that with Civil War and Captain America. Now, before we get to my number one pick, I am going to do a few honorable mentions. Annihilus. Introduction to the Negative Zone will be great for the MCU moving forward, especially if what we are seeing is true and we will see much more of a multiverse developed within the films. He would make a great introduction as a villain for Doctor Strange specifically, as it would be something that he would face off most likely against. And then also, though it's not his technical original origins, it'd be a great way to introduce Mr. Negative, who was such a popular villain in the Spider-Man game. And, you know, we would have to do a little bit more of a re-adaptation for him for this, but I think it'd be a kind of a great segue for him as well. I do put this as an honorable mention, though, because this would be a whole new thing that would need to be established for the whole multiverse Negative Zone. It's a whole race of people we haven't seen yet, so it would be a substantial introduction, which I don't necessarily know that we will see right now. Enchantress. Though I do feel like we are taking a step back from the Asgardians and their people, we do have a Loki Disney Plus series coming forward, and I think Enchantress would be a fantastic counterpart and rival for Loki in this series. Now, of course, we're not really sure which direction this will go in, and if Loki does continue to be the villain of his own series, then Enchantress wouldn't really be needed, but I do think that she would be an asset to the MCU and something that would be greatly used, especially within this Loki series. The High Evolutionary. Having kind of already been strongly alluded to being the major portion of the Volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't really want to give them a spot, but if he is not used in that film, I do think he is someone that we need to see later on in the MCU somehow. The final honorable mention, Celestials. Eagle was great in Volume 2 of the Guardians of the Galaxy and claimed to be a Celestial, though technically isn't, but I think the real Celestials would be a great force for the kind of cosmic hack of the MCU to face. They aren't necessarily evil and scheming against anyone, but they are just forces of nature that kind of are malevolent and can cause problems for our characters. So seeing the true Celestials at their full potential would be something fantastic to see. Number 1, Onslaught. I would like to see him be used as the major reset button for the MCU. Now, this will be way down the road, but eventually it will need to happen where we kill off everyone and start over. With some heroes already being phased out and future heroes needing to be phased out at some point, eventually we're going to run out of heroes that really resonate with fans and will want to start over from the beginning. Now, Onslaught would be great for this. He is born from the powers of Magneto and Professor X combining, two characters that will be coming to the MCU, and he actually led to the eventual destruction of the entire Marvel comic universe, which I think could be used for the MCU as well, because then it led to the Heroes Reborn franchise within Marvel Comics. And that would then allow us to reintroduce many of our favorite characters, such as Captain America, Iron Man, and the eventual replacement of things like Thor and whatnot, as we will unfortunately have to see it into those characters as well. So this is one that's going to be way down the road, of course, at least I hope, because I'm not ready to kind of see a reset of the MCU yet, but I think, in my opinion, he would be the best use for this. That's it, guys. That's my list of what I would like to see for MCU villains moving forward. As I mentioned, this, of course, is what I would like to see, not necessarily who I think is the most probable to show up in the MCU moving forward. But I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know, did you like my picks? Were there people and villains that you thought should have been on the list but weren't included? So down in the comments, let me have it, guys. I'm happy to see what you guys have to say as well. And if you think I really should go into any more in-depth thoughts on some of these villains and my theories with them and how they could be used, I'd happy to do so. So drop those in the comments as well. Speaking of future videos, make sure to subscribe and set your alerts so you can get all of those as I move forward. But in the meantime, I love you all 3,000. I hope you have a marvelous rest of your day. And until next time, bye, friends.